My parents threw my suitcase across the living room and screamed, "Give up the room or move out!" That's the night I decided I'd never beg them again. If this story shocks you already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You won't believe how it ends. I stood there frozen, watching my mother point toward the stairs like I was some unwanted guest. The same room I'd slept in since childhood, the one I painted myself when I was 16, was now being given to my brother, Tyler, and his new wife. "You're 26, Layla," Dad barked. "You don't even have a real job. Let adults live here." The words stung deeper than they realized. What they didn't know was that for 2 years, I'd been quietly freelancing as a web designer, building brands, saving every penny, while they laughed at my unstable career. Tyler worked at Dad's company, drove his car, and still complained about gas money. I never said a word, but every insult they threw at me became fuel. That night, when Mom shoved a box into my hands and said, "You should have listened and married someone rich like your cousin," something in me broke, but not in the way they expected. I smiled, wiped my tears, and said calmly, "You'll regret this." They laughed, thinking I was bluffing. The next morning, I left with nothing but a laptop, 2 bags, and a plan. I rented a tiny studio apartment across town, one with peeling paint and broken blinds, but it was mine. I worked days, nights, weekends, even skipped meals to build websites for startups. I didn't post anything online, didn't update my family, didn't even reply to Mom's occasional, "Are you still alive?" texts. I wanted silence while I built my storm. Months passed, then years. My clients turned into big companies, my designs started winning awards, and the number in my bank account began to look unreal. Still, I kept quiet, because I wanted the day I returned to be unforgettable. And that day came, 3 years later, when I parked a brand new Tesla right outside their house. But it wasn't just the car that would shock them. It was what I had bought across the street. When I stepped out of the car, Mom's jaw nearly dropped. She was standing in the driveway, pruning her roses in her silk robe like always. "Layla?" she said slowly, squinting as if her eyes couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Whose car is that?" I smiled politely. "Mine." Dad came out next, newspaper still in his hand. "Yours? Stop joking. You couldn't even afford rent last time we talked." I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. I handed him a small white envelope instead. "Actually, I bought something," I said calmly. Inside was the property deed to the $1.2 million house directly facing theirs. The same house Dad used to point at and say, "People like us could never afford something like that." Now, it had my name on it, Layla Carter, written in bold ink. Mom's hand trembled as she pulled out the papers. This can't be real." "How?" I shrugged lightly, pretending it wasn't a big deal. "Just a few websites here and there. Remember that unstable job you mocked? Turns out, it pays well when you're good at it." Tyler came out with his wife, holding a mug that said, "Boss Man." He snorted. "You bought that house?" "Yeah, right. What bank would loan you that much?" "Oh, I didn't need a loan," I said, walking toward the sold sign. "I paid in full, cash." Their faces froze. Even Tyler's wife choked on her coffee. For the first time, the people who once treated me like the family's failure stood speechless. Mom stammered, "Layla, you could have told us you were doing so well." I looked right at her. "You could have believed in me when I wasn't." The silence that followed felt like justice. I turned away and started walking toward my new home, my heels clicking against the driveway like victory drums. But before I reached the gate, Dad muttered something under his breath that stopped me cold. He said, "You think money can buy respect, Layla? You'll learn soon enough. It can't buy family." I turned back slowly, meeting his eyes. "Then it's a good thing," I said softly. "I stopped trying to buy that a long time ago." What none of them knew was that the house I bought wasn't just for me. It had a purpose, one that would make every single one of them regret ever pushing me out. 2 weeks later, word spread fast around the neighborhood. Layla's house had become the talk of the block. Every truck that arrived carried something new: custom furniture, marble counters, solar panels, a designer landscaper. My parents stood on their porch every morning, pretending not to watch as my dream home took shape right in front of theirs. Mom tried to act sweet again, waving awkwardly whenever she saw me. "You should come for dinner sometime," she called out one afternoon. I smiled politely but didn't move. "I'm busy, Mom. Maybe later." Later never came. Inside my new home, I was building something bigger than they imagined. I had started my own web design agency, Luna Wave Studios, employing local freelancers who had once been turned down by big firms, just like me. Within months, we were handling clients from Los Angeles, New York, even overseas. The business was booming, and I was finally living the life they said I couldn't. Then came the day that changed everything, the Carter family dinner. Mom called me personally. "Layla, your brother just got promoted. We're celebrating tonight. It would mean a lot if you came." Every word sounded carefully chosen, almost too polite. I could feel the hidden tone, not love, but curiosity. They wanted to see how much I'd really changed. I almost said no, but something inside me whispered, "Go. It's time." When I arrived that evening, their house looked the same. Old wallpaper, same dull furniture, the same smell of Mom's lasagna. But the energy had shifted. Everyone went quiet as I walked in, dressed in a cream blazer and heels. "Wow, Layla, you look expensive," Tyler's wife said, forcing a laugh. I smiled back. "Thanks, you too." "Tried." The room chuckled nervously. Dad cleared his throat. "So what have you been doing these days? Still freelancing on that computer of yours?" I took a sip of water, then said calmly, "I run my own company now." "We design for major brands," he smirked. "Sure you do." Mom jumped in quickly. "Layla, don't be dramatic. Tyler's been working nonstop. He even got his own department." "Isn't that amazing?" Tyler grinned proudly, leaning back in his chair. "Yeah, I just closed a deal with a big tech client last week. A company called Luna Wave Studios." My fork froze midair. I looked up slowly. "Wait," I said with a faint smile. "You closed a deal with Luna Wave?" He nodded. "Yeah, they're designing our company's new website. Some fancy agency from out west. You probably never heard of them." My heart pounded as every eye turned toward me. I smiled wider. "Actually," I said softly, "I've heard of them. I own them." The entire table went dead silent. Tyler's face went pale. Dad's glass slipped from his hand. Mom gasped so loud you could hear it echo. And before anyone could speak, I placed my company card on the table, with my name embossed in gold, Layla Carter, CEO, Luna Wave Studios. But that wasn't the part that truly broke them. The real twist was yet to come. The moment hung in the air like lightning. Dad's hand trembled as he picked up my business card, reading it twice as if he couldn't trust his eyes. "CEO?" he whispered. "You're joking." Tyler's face turned beet red. "You expect us to believe this? That my company's been paying you?" I leaned back in my chair, calm and collected. "Not just paying me, Tyler. Contracted by me. Your company's website deal goes through my approval. Every design, every invoice, every payment." Mom pressed her hands over her mouth. "Layla, how did this even happen?" I took a slow breath, looking around the table that once mocked me. "The night you threw me out, I promised myself that one day you'd see me differently. So I worked. I learned. I built something from nothing. You told me I wasn't stable enough for real life. Now I own $1 million company, and the house across the street from yours." Dad's expression shifted from disbelief to guilt. "You could have told us," he muttered. "You wouldn't have listened," I replied quietly. "You never did." Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than us now? Because you got lucky?" "Lucky?" I laughed. "No, Tyler. Luck didn't keep me awake at 3 a.m. trying to pay rent. Luck didn't stop me from crying while coding in a freezing apartment. This wasn't luck. It was survival." The room went still again. I could see the shame in their eyes, but I wasn't finished yet. I pulled another document from my purse and slid it across the table. "What's this?" Dad asked cautiously. "It's the new client renewal form," I said with a faint smile. "Your company needs to re-sign the design contract next month. I came here tonight to let you know." "I'm not renewing it." Tyler's voice cracked. "What? You can't do that." I worked for months to close that deal. I met his eyes with a steady calm. "Exactly. Maybe next time, You'll learn to respect the people you underestimate. The silence was deafening. No one dared to move. Even Mom's lasagna sat untouched, the smell fading under the weight of humiliation. I stood up, adjusting my blazer. I should go, I said softly. Oh, and Dad, the view from my front porch? It's perfect. I can see this house every morning. A nice reminder of where I came from. As I reached the door, Mom whispered through tears, Layla, please don't leave like this. I paused, looked over my shoulder and said, You told me to move out once. I just did, and I moved up. But what they didn't know was that this story wasn't over, because soon something would happen that would make them come knocking on my door, begging for the very help they once mocked me for offering. It happened just 3 months later. I was sipping coffee on my porch one quiet morning when I saw Dad pacing outside his house, looking anxious. Soon after, Mom came out, her face pale, holding a stack of papers. They looked defeated. A few minutes later, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, all 3 of them were standing there, Mom, Dad, and Tyler. The same family who once threw me out now stood on my doorstep, the house behind them looking smaller than ever. Layla, Dad said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. We need your help. I stayed silent, letting the words hang. Tyler avoided eye contact, his wife clutching his arm nervously. Mom took a shaky breath. Your father's company, it's in trouble. The new website crashed and our biggest clients pulled out. We might lose everything. I crossed my arms. And what do you want from me? Tyler finally spoke, but his voice cracked. Your agency is the best, Layla. We know we messed up, but please, we need you to fix this. It was surreal. The same people who once said I wasn't good enough were now begging for my expertise. For a moment, I wanted to say no, to remind them of every cruel word. But then, something inside me shifted. I stepped aside and said, Come in. They looked shocked, but they entered quietly. I sat them down in my living room, the same house they once said I'd never afford. I'll help you, I said finally, but not for free. You'll pay the same rate as any client. No discounts, no special treatment. Dad nodded slowly. Fair enough. Over the next week, I worked with my team day and night. We rebuilt their website, optimized their branding, and helped recover their reputation. Their business started rising again, because of me. When it was done, Dad visited one last time. He looked around my house, the same view facing his, and said quietly, I was wrong about you, Layla. You didn't just make it. You became everything we weren't brave enough to be. I smiled gently. I didn't do it to prove you wrong, Dad. I did it to prove myself right. He nodded, eyes glassy. You did, and we're proud, even if we showed it too late. As they left, I stood by my window watching them cross the street. The same people who once turned their backs on me were now walking back to their home, humbled, and for the first time I didn't feel anger, just peace. Because success wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about knowing I didn't need their approval anymore. I turned toward my office, my phone buzzing with a new client inquiry. I smiled to myself. The girl they once told to move out had built her empire, right across from theirs. And every sunset that fell between our 2 houses reminded me of one truth. Sometimes the best revenge is just quietly winning.